Welcome back. Today I have a story unlike anything else in the horror gaming genre that will most definitely catch your attention. Before I start though, I want to give you a heads up. This is a story-oriented game that is linear, meaning after you hear my retelling of it, despite me not mentioning everything, most will be spoiled. Please go play this game for yourself before watching this video. It's best experienced by you, yourself, being in the driver's seat. For one last thing, I would also like to ask that you please subscribe, leave a like, and leave a comment of your favorite part of the upcoming story. If you change your mind, you can always unsubscribe or unlike the video. With that out of the way, let's get into what horrible things await us beneath the ocean's waves. The game starts off with our main character Kaz reading a letter from his wife, essentially telling him if something isn't fixed, she's gonna divorce him. Now, as to what that something is, we'll find out in a minute, but after reading that letter, we get called to go get breakfast. Right before our meal, though, we meet... Wait. Finley? After getting to the canteen, we talk to everybody we can, and then we grab our food from the best boy, Roy. When getting our food, though, our bastard of a boss, Rennick, decides that we have to go see him as we're in a little bit of trouble with the police. Turns out we battered some poor guy's skull in, but... well, it's whatever, I'm sure he deserved it anyway. Now, something to note here before we go any further, this dialogue is biblically accurate to the Scottish dialect, meaning they may be speaking English, but my ears hear what I imagine the native dialect of haggis to sound like.
On there, fellas. McCleary. No, I can scalp in this hero by myself.
All jokes aside, I love the voice acting here, and it ties everything together really well. It makes me wish that Scottish people weren't fictional and were actually real. Back to the game though, we travel throughout the outside deck and eventually reach Rennick's office where he chews us out and fires us. I'll let Kaz speak for me here and call him what he is.
Out! Get off my rig!
Bruh.
Happy New Year to you too, you cunt.
At the end of the day though, Rennick wants us gone, so we head to the helipad in order to get flown off this hellhole. It can never be that easy though, and the drill that the rig has been using for oil hits something under the water and causes the entire rig to shake, knocking us along with a couple others off into the sea. I'm gonna stop one last time here to ask you to play the game for yourself if you're interested in the concept. It's not expensive and it's a fantastic experience unspoiled. But now that the final warning's out of the way, here's the rest of the video. So at this point, we have a flashback to before getting on the rig. All of these give us some backstories with more elaboration on how characters felt and why Kaz is on the rig. If you want to see all of these, go play the game for yourself because this video would be super long if we had every character interaction in it. But I'll give you all a quick little rundown. The gist of all the flashbacks in the game is that Kaz is on the run from the police after having a violent incident with some random dude. After the incident, he gets on the rig with the help of Roy, who's his best friend and godfather to his children, and then Suze, his wife, is really unhappy with that decision to run and threatens to divorce him. But instead of listening to his wife, he goes anyway, and then the game's events take place. Boom, that's really all you need to know from the flashbacks. Let's get back to the video. After the flashback, we wake up to being fished out of the sea. We're tasked with helping Brody, who becomes very important later on, with opening a diving bell. After getting the bell up to Brody, he tells us to go figure out what's going on the rig and that he'll handle the rest. He tells us to go through engineering, which we have a little parkour section before finding whatever the hell we drilled into spiraling up from the ocean like some Junji Ito monster. Douglas tells us to get away from the area and to meet him inside engineering, so that's what we do. While traveling around Leg Sea and engineering, we find a trusty flashlight which will carry us on its back for the rest of the entire game. Everything has been starting to be infected by whatever we drilled into, like some organism is trying to convert the rig into a part of itself. As we travel further into engineering, we're made aware that we aren't alone. We end up meeting Finley, who tells us that one of the crew members has been transformed into something else and that we'll have to pass by him in order to get through to accommodation. Eventually, we encounter him, and it definitely seems like he's gone insane. Despite him begging us not to leave,
You're fine.
we sneak past him and finally exit engineering to get to accommodation. This is where the game introduces us to heaters that we have to use in order to get warm. Now, I say this, but heaters are only used in a total of like 4 times. If anything, these are nice just because they give us a second to relax after some higher tension areas. While exploring through accommodation, we find a door with a mysterious light, and one of the workers we met before named Trot's behind it suffering from something unimaginable. After hearing whatever the hell that was, we noped the hell out of there and ran straight to the canteen in order to find Roy, who was busy moving supplies into a storage area that he could fortify. He says he saw something on the deck, but it scared him so bad that he ran and wanted to hide and stay safe. He worries that we might leave him, but we wouldn't dream of it. We decide to go access lifeboats and come back for Roy after they're ready to deploy. As we were leaving though, we came across this disgusting mess of flesh in the stairway.
What the fuck's happened to them?
As we were walking though, the entity decides to block our stairs, so we cut through laundry. Some tendrils try to grab us, and we once again nope the hell out of there onto the lifeboat access. There's some more parkour, and Rennick still says that everything will be sorted out in 15 minutes, so everybody should be ready to work. We finally reach the lifeboats and ready them, but as we do, it turns out whoever installed them cheaped out and assumed nothing bad would ever happen because they don't work and end up going flying into the ocean. Rennick calls us on the phone and tells us to meet him at the helipad in order to get off the rig, as he doesn't want our death to be on his record. We tell him that doors are locked, and he tells us the only base thing in the entirety of his dialogue, which is just kick the fucking door and it'll open. On the way up, we put out a fire and had another phone call and then entered the next area, which was utility. At this point, we see whatever the hell's been taking over the rig has been doing a hell of a good job. We're pretty sure that touching all the fleshy stuff probably kills or transforms us, so we stay as far away as possible. As we're crawling through the vents, we find one of the monsters searching for a good washing machine to do his laundry in.
Jesus.
What the? He clearly has a little bit of tism, but hey, don't we all? This is our first sneaking section. We gotta get past the big scary monster to get to the next area without dying. You've seen it before, but this game gives us a pretty high tension that we started literally sweating at different points in the game. I have a feeling we need to wait. Yeah. In these sections, we move from hiding spot to hiding spot, occasionally throwing objects to distract whatever monster's hiding us. Unfortunately for us though, Kaz has to make some noise at the end of the area, so we fucking run for our lives.
Fucking move it!
After finally escaping, we run into Roy again, where we tell him to go find insulin for his type 2 diabetes head ass in his cabin while we go to the helipad in order to prevent Rennick from leaving us behind. Once on the deck, we hear something howling, and whatever that is, we wanted to do nothing with it.
I don't like the sound of that. Whatever it is.
So we tried to run as fast as possible to the lift that gets us to the helipad. As we were traveling, we disabled some annoying electricity and watched some poor man get obliterated.
No! Jesus. Dobby.
God! We meet Innes, who we had a phone call with earlier, and he tells us that this new monster, Mirror, doesn't want anyone to leave and is watching the crew lift.
What you doing up there? That thing will see you.
Wait, Innes?
It's Muir, cuz. It's fucking Muir.
I know.
Here's another sneaking section, but this time it's so much scarier due to the fact that we can see him and it's in a larger outside area. After sneaking and having him chase us once, we get close to the lift. Unfortunately though, it's never that easy, and getting to the lift isn't all we have to do, as we have to move hoist controls in order to reach the lift. Luckily, we reached the controls with minimal issues, which left Innes to reach the lift. We sprint over to Innes to escape, but as the lift is raising, Innes doesn't get as lucky as we are and gets abducted by the monster. We finally reach the helipad, but as we do, the helicopter takes off, leaving us behind. Funnily enough though, they get their karma and the helicopter crashes on the rig, leaving us with no more options to escape. That doesn't look good.
Oh yeah, because electronics haven't been working right.
We have another flashback where we're reminded about how good Kaz is with the Lecky, then we wake up back on the helipad. We find a phone once again where our old friend Brody calls us and lets us know that we have to fix the generators or we're gonna have bigger issues. To get to the Jennies though, we gotta head through admin. Once in admin, our pal Scooby gives us a call letting us know that he is in the walls. Definitely not gonna worry about that one though, so we just continued on as if he didn't say that. Unfortunately for us though, that he was Rennick, and he's back and looking uglier than ever.
By the way, for the record, you should probably knock or make yourself known next time you enter someone's place.
Dude, I don't even think you should be in here to begin with.
Yeah, not really your business though, is it?
Now it's chase time, and we hit that running in the 90s type shit as we fucking sprinted out of there like an Irishman locking onto some potatoes. All jokes aside, this chase was really well done with tiny breaks in Rennick coming back to hunt us down. His design is awesome, and I appreciate what the developers had a vision for here. At the end of the chase, we break a lock and close the door, locking Rennick and admin whilst we head out to the starboard side. Once on the starboard side, there isn't too much to do as we do some parkour and jump on the destroyed helicopter Rennick tried to escape with, and then we head further down into the rig by once again accessing engineering. After finally reaching where we should be able to fix the generators in engineering, we meet Finley again. Finley lets us know that we're on backup power right now, that it isn't going to last long. We'll need to reset a protective relay in order to get the place up and running again. Once resetting the relay, despite it looking all good, it fails and the power goes bad again. Finley lets us know that we have to reset the generator manually and that there's a fault somewhere that we're gonna have to fix. Finley says she'll get the fault, but it's our job to do the generators. Of course, there's screaming coming from the direction of the generators, and because Kaz is the realest main character in the world, he tries to fight back, but then ends up going to reset the Jennies. Because it could never be that easy as flipping a switch, once we get close to the generator, the next monster, Adair, makes his presence known. After sneaking past his furry pet play wannabe head ass, we tried to reset the power, but of course the fault is a problem, and we can't get the power back to working without fixing it.
I'm an engineer. That means I solve problems.
Finley says it's up to us to fix the fault, and also Adair's back, so good luck. We sneak, quite masterfully might I add. Fuck. And eventually make it to the fault. After fixing it, Adair still tries to kill us and chases us, but we escape. Unfortunately, he still follows us to the next area and we have to sneak to reset the relay. Once flipping the relay again though, the job is done and the power's working.
I solve problems.
Once the power's back, Brody calls and tells us that we're sinking. In order to save the rig, we gotta go to the pontoons and engage the wenches in legs A and B. Hence, we continue our journey to leg A. This section I'm gonna keep short for the sake of time. All that really happens here is parkour and engaging of some mechanisms. One thing of note though is when we meet O'Connor, who's been kept alive by the entity. After seeing something so horrible though, we're somewhat blessed by something much more beautiful during an elevator ride to accommodations after using the wenches on legs A and B.
It's so beautiful.
After entering accommodation again, we get to use a heater for the second time ever. After warming ourselves up though, we check in with Roy over the phone. Roy tells us not to worry about him and to fix the rig up so we can get home to our family. We know he isn't doing well and that he needs his insulin, but by this point, he should have gotten it. Right? At the end of the call, something explodes, and that's our cue to figure out what's going on. On the way, we hear our wife calling out to us, which is weird, but not as weird as the furry monster. After we get to the location of the explosion, we find Brody, who lets us know that the stack has a leak, and if it reaches the rig, the entire thing might explode. We tell him hell no, we don't want to go fix the leak, and he should go. But as per usual, there's an excuse, and we gotta do it. He gives us a relighter in case using a diverter on the gas doesn't work, and we go on our merry way. Unfortunately, simply going out and diverting gas would be too easy, and Adair's in the area we need to be in. He's right there.
Oh, Christ.
Fortunately, after breaking our elevator, Adair was too stupid to actually kill us, so we just get out and sneak towards our objective. Unfortunately, once again, after diverting gas, the igniter doesn't work, and we have to go use our relighter to manually ignite the gas. Once on the stack, Adair decides this is the perfect time to chase us, and we run to the end, successfully igniting the stack and accidentally killing Adair. This will be the 30th time I've said this, but unfortunately the stack falls apart and we get knocked out into another flashback. After the flashback's over though, we wake up hanging above the ocean, where after sorting ourselves out, we get to see how the infection has evolved from where we initially first saw it. Once again though, we enter engineering to get to accommodation. Once in engineering, we meet Finley and Brody again, who are both surprised to see us and clearly hiding a plan. Brody tells us that he's going to dive and release tension cables and that we need to go with Finley to flood an area at Marine Control. Unfortunately, once again, an issue arises when Roy gets on the speakers and asks for help because he's stuck on the roof of accommodations.
I'm stuck on this roof. It's burning this shit.
Because the rig is flooding, we have to swim through engineering to reach accommodation. Once entering accommodation, we get to use the heater for a third time and find some more gory body horror before getting hunted down by Trotz, who was killed behind a door very early in the game. Now, we were sneaking very carefully around, and it wasn't too hard or anything, but this is when I'm gonna take a detour real quick and say that this game did something that many horror games either forget to do or just don't do and skip out on, which is do some scary shit in vents. Trotz follows and chases us both inside and outside the vents before being killed by the vengeance of the rig. Fuck! Oh, is he dead? Once he's dead though, it's time to head to the accommodation roof. On the roof, instead of rushing to Roy, we decided to look at the pretty flesh spiral as a break.
I gotta tell you, it was perfect.
After the break though, we rushed to Roy only to find out that he passed away without his insulin in one of the best voice acted death scenes I've ever seen.
Roy, don't leave me. I can't do this, man. I'm scared, Roy. I'm fucking terrified. I love this big man. Do you hear me? I loved him.
After his death, we warmed by the fourth heater in the game and picked up the phone to hear from Finley that we still need to go to Marine Control. After parkouring a bit and reaching the control room, we find another crewmate, Rupert, covered in infection, telling us that Rennick is coming for him.
You are mine!
All we end up doing here is taking a key and flooding the pontoons. Brody was in the area that we're flooding, but by this point, he's out. right? On our way to meet up with Finley, we see some more body horror before running into Rennick for the final time. We have a final chase sequence with water flooding the area before we close a hatch on Rennick, drowning and putting him to rest.
Michael! Don't leave me here! Michael! Michael!
After the chase, we enter drill operations to meet Finley and Brody, where we have a heart-wrenching death scene for one of our companions. Brody's death is horrifying in so many ways and had such a profound impact on us when we played.
The leg's flooded and the gas, it's not possible.
You got your dive gear?
Aye, but
So you can use that.
it's oil, Kaz. There's nothing to be done.
Don't fucking say that.
I knew the risk when I came down here.
Fuck. Can he lose you as well?
Listen, I'm alright, Kaz. I'm already back on Sky. You've never seen water like that, Kaz. Clear, peaceful. You just let go and everything's fine.
Aye.
I'm sure she wouldn't do something so stupid.
Brody, you there?
Kaz,
What's stupid? Talk to me.
it's getting higher.
Alright, I'm here, Brody. I'm not going anywhere. Alright, I'm here.
Get him.
Brody. Oh, fuck. Brody. Jesus.
The thought of being trapped in a space with no out and knowing that the only end for you is drowning is horrifying. Not only is that bad in of itself, but him calling out to see if Kaz was still on the line just so that he didn't die alone adds such a human element to this scene that we rarely get to see, not only in horror, but media in general. After Brody's death, Finley says fuck it and goes to light the entire rig in order to stop the infection from reaching the mainland. We rush to stop her, but in the process, metal falls and we're presented with the death of our final friend.
If it gets to the mainland, you know I'm right. I'm always fucking right.
Oh, Christ. Christ. Alright.
As she passes, she gives us back our lighter that we lent her before everything went to shit and convinces us to finish this to protect everything and everyone we loved on the mainland. And so Kaz walks into the spiral that's been present since the beginning. He lights the flame, drops the lighter, and sacrifices his life to protect those who he loved. We get one more scene before the credits roll of the morning that Kaz left his children and his wife to flee the country and work on the rig. He tells his wife that he's sorry, that he'll be back for a Christmas that he'll never see.
Kiss the Waynes for me. Tell them I'll be back for Christmas. I'm sorry, Suze.
Suze writes a letter after his death. Not knowing that he's passed, she says she knows that they can get through this, and that he should make sure to come home to her and their children.
I'm sorry it's been so hard. I just wanted to send you this. To say we'll get through it. I know we will. Be safe out there on those waters. My man. My love.
So after all that, let's talk about it. I want to talk about the studio a little bit and the development before I get into some of the main points. Now, the studio that developed this was the Chinese Room, and they have a little bit of negative history. Firstly, they're known for 3 titles, one of which you'll definitely recognize as it's infamous. They're behind Dear Esther, Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, and Amnesia, A Machine for Pigs. The drama around A Machine for Pigs is something we aren't going to talk about, as that could be a video all on its own, but for those of you who enjoy horror, you probably already know that story. So why do I bring up past games this studio's made? Well, out of all the complaints I've seen about this game, the number one is that it's a walking simulator and not worth anyone's money at the $35 price point. Now, I try to be as fair as possible when it comes to pros and cons, and to be frank, I just don't understand what the issue is. Before playing the game, I'll admit, I was a little hesitant when hearing that this was only around 4 hours for $35, but after actually playing the game, I believe $30-ish and 4 hours of gameplay is right where this game should be. I'm a fan of horror, especially The Thing. This game is set in the 1970s in the North Sea, and when I heard the idea of The Thing on an oil rig, I was like, holy shit, How hasn't this been done before? Not only is the idea great, but the details are phenomenal. The Chinese room did such a great job, it's incredible to see what they've done here. Looking at the development of the game, they watched documentaries about oil rigs in the 1970s, hired voice actors from areas that make sense for the area that the game takes place in, and they even interviewed oil rig workers to ensure everything was as accurate as possible. That's dedication to your craft. On top of all of that, the game is absolutely beautiful. There were several points where we literally just stopped playing and looked at grotesque body horror or out-of-world ethereal beauty of the rig as it was being infected. Now, outside of the actual game design, the characters felt real and full of personality. Every single time Kaz has to go do some other stupid shit on an oil rig with monsters, he goes, fuck that, I don't want to do it. Obviously, he ends up having to do it, but having a character say, no, why don't you do it, feels good in an industry overflowing with, yes, I'll run to the monster crowded objective with no issues because you said so. Every single time Kaz runs into a dead body or is put into some horrible situation, he acts like a normal person. He isn't some hero, he's just a guy like the rest of us, and I can feel it in every line of dialogue. Even when Roy dies, he acts like a human. He doesn't just fly by, okay, he's done, on to the next area. He takes some time to grieve for a moment, and it's human. I already talked about Brody's death and why it's so good, so I won't waste more time there, but most important deaths actually made me feel something, which is more than I can say about most of the games made nowadays. Now, on the topic of monster design, I'm not even gonna say anything. It speaks for itself. Look at the monsters and tell me the designs are bad. You can't. Topic over, looks phenomenal. Now we're going to talk about the sound design. Hearing Kaz's breathing when a monster's nearby helps to raise the stress levels more than you could ever imagine. And on top of that, hearing monster tentacles latch onto objects and pull themselves around grotesquely was absolutely grating, and I loved every second of it. Speaking of the monsters though, I love the visual indicator of where monsters were. If you actually pay attention to any area with monsters or even infection, there's this weird visual effect on the edges of the screen when Kaz is close to infection or monsters that tells the player what direction the infection or monster is located in. The fact that this visual effect happens not just with the monsters, but all of the infection makes me feel immersed, as it doesn't just feel like a gameplay mechanic the devs shoved in. Speaking of the gameplay though, we only had one large complaint with the game, and that is crashes. We had crashes when entering different areas where the screen would literally just turn black and freeze the game, where we had to restart our computer. Turns out this is due to a DSR3 setting that needed to be changed. After we did that, we didn't have the problem anymore, but I still gotta dock a couple points here because it was really annoying to have our game crash like 4 times. Yet again, after the change, the game ran pretty smoothly, but I do have to mention that there were a couple things that didn't. Now, especially towards the beginning of the game, we were looking around, there were wires and some small objects that ran at like 15 frames per second instead of 60 that everything else was. While that's a little weird, it wasn't too distracting, especially as we got later into the game. At its core, this is a heavily detailed playable visual novel with incredible storytelling and an even better premise that doesn't overstay its welcome. If you're a horror fan, get this game. We give this a 9.3. It's beautiful and full of life, and I have no idea when we're gonna get a game this good again in the horror community, so please go buy it so we can get more like this made. So that's it. This was a pretty heavy one, and I have no idea when we're next gonna see a story in this genre that's so captivating, but now that we're at the end, I would like to remind you of one last thing. Please subscribe, leave a like, or comment your favorite part of the game. Every bit of engagement helps, and you can always take it away if you feel like we don't deserve it. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, have a peaceful journey.